Minister Justin Trudeau is celebrating a massive free trade deal with the European Union, which finally comes into effect today after 8 years of talks. It's called the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA for short. Here's an idea of its scale. Trade in goods between the two sides was worth around $77 billion last year. The deal will eliminate the vast majority of tariffs or customs charges on goods flowing between the two sides. It poses a bit of a challenge for Britain, which led the way in negotiating the deal, but will no longer be part of it when it leaves the European Union. On a visit to Canada earlier this week, UK Prime Minister Theresa May promised a seamless transition to a new trade deal with Canada, although nothing can be formally negotiated, of course, until the UK finally exit the EU. The Canadian Prime Minister, though, is also optimistic.
Indeed. Within the European Union, the UK is the largest trading partner that Canada has. So the UK was deeply involved throughout those negotiations towards CETA, obviously, over the past 7 years. And it will form the basis for the way we move forward in a post-Brexit Europe. We are very confident that we're going to be able to continue the strong trade ties and commercial relationships with the UK, between the UK and Canada, throughout this period of transition.
Well, I'm joined by William Swords, President of the Canada-UK Chamber of Commerce. Good morning.
Good morning.
So both leaders, both Prime Ministers, at pains to say this relationship will continue no matter what with regards to the UK leaving the European Union. How seamless can the transition be in reality?
Well, I think the objective is to make the transition as seamless as possible. And I think, as you've heard, both Prime Ministers certainly articulate that goal and that objective. I think they also indicated that CETA as it stands today, the document as it stands today, will form the basis of those discussions going forward. Although both the UK and the EU have a process to go through, so as you mentioned earlier, no formal negotiations can take place until that process concludes, but certainly discussion and dialogue can occur in advance of that.
Just talk us through the trade relationship between the UK and Canada specifically. I've mentioned, how important the EU is as a whole, but the UK and Canada?
Well, the UK and Canada have a long shared history, and that goes back a long way. Indeed, the Chamber of Commerce, of which I'm president, is celebrating its 96th year this year, and we've had our busiest year last year, and this year is now on record to be even busier. The importance of the UK to Canada cannot be understated. Canada certainly the UK is the third largest export market for Canadian goods and services, and Canada is heavily invested into the UK. The UK also exports somewhere in the region of about £7 billion every year of products and services to Canada, and the expectation is that that will be built upon and expanded over the next few years. So the intent is to develop and deepen an existing relationship, a relationship which is long-standing and ties that go back an awfully long period of time.
There were concerns about CETA. We mentioned there were protests in some parts of Europe. There was protests about environmental concerns, that kind of thing. But in terms of the impact of this new trade deal, what's the benefit for businesses trading between Europe and Canada?
Certainly the key headline takeaways are the elimination of virtually 90%, if not more, of the restrictions and the impediments between trading between the two blocs, between Canada and the EU. So if you eliminate tariffs, the intent is that you will then also be able to drive up trade, drive up interaction between the two economies, and help those economies to prosper and grow into the future. A simple example, mackerel, frozen mackerel, if it's caught off the shores of Canada, is currently subject to a 20% tariff before that mackerel comes into the UK and into the EU. That will go. So we will see
we'll have cheaper mackerel.
Cheaper mackerel coming this way, and then on the other way around, alcohol, duties on alcohol going into Canada will be reduced as well. So the 40 billion market, Canadian dollar market of alcohol will be open to UK exporters as well. So
very interesting.
More fish and more booze.
William Swords, thanks so much for coming in. President of Canada-UK Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for getting up so early for us. Right, let's tell you about the Fed. The US